About a year ago, I reviewed the AAP-01 by Action Army. It quickly became one of my favorite handguns to work on in airsoft, and it quickly became popular after its release among airsofters across the globe. It was easy to customize, easy to work on, and was a great performer for a very cheap price. Since its release, I've also released products for it that everybody seems to be enjoying, and I'm very grateful for that. It just seems to have had a very healthy and good life. However, I have noticed that a whole year later, there isn't any really good takedown or disassembly and reassembly of the entire AAP-01. So that's the plan for today's video. I'm going to show you how to take apart the AAP-01 from every single piece and put it back together, and maybe we'll even throw in some lube there so you know how to maintain it properly. So for this video, I bought a brand new AAP-01, so we're all going to be on the same page here. There's nothing in this that is different or something you shouldn't expect. So here we have it, the pistol we all know and love. And so what we're going to do is just eject the magazine first, put that to one side. And so the AAP-01 can be very simply explained in two pieces. There is the upper half and the lower half. Some call this the upper assembly and the frame, but for now we'll just go upper and lower. The upper is actually very easy to disassemble in its entirety. The lower is when we have issues, especially with the hammer assembly. It doesn't necessarily cause problems, it can just be quite difficult to take apart, especially if you don't have a guide. So hopefully this video will make this all a lot more clear. So first off, we want to take off the upper from the lower, and to do that you just press down on this button here. Once that is done, you can just pull off from this point here. You don't need to be forceful, just pulls apart like that. Put the lower away for now. And that leaves us with this tasty looking upper. In here you can see the bolt, the nozzle, the hop up, the barrel, and all the screws that keep it together. So to start with, we are going to need to take out the rear iron sights. This is simply just two screws we take out. You can use an Allen key or a tool set. I'll be using a tool set today. It should be very easy. Put these screws somewhere safe where you can get to them later. Once these screws are out, your rear sight will just be able to lift off like that. No other pieces connected, just keep that somewhere safe for now. And then once that's done, your bolt will just be able to drag out. There'll be a small bit of resistance because your nozzle will be sticking in your hop-up chamber, but other than that, it should be easy. We're going to put our upper away for one moment. And here you have it, our bolt assembly, all pristine and new and lovely. This is very simple to take apart. First off, we are going to unscrew these two little screws here. They hold in sort of a retainer that keeps our nozzle from coming out, also houses our recoil system. Once these are unscrewed, it will poke out just a bit like this, and you can just simply pull it up, and out comes these three parts. So these three parts are two screws, the plastic block, and our nozzle return spring. I do actually sell a replacement nozzle return spring should yours break. It is 135%, so it's a bit stronger than this, and that allows you to feed just a little bit better. But for now, we will put this all away. If you do want to change your nozzle return spring, you simply just pull it off this post and you put on a new one. It's a very easy system. Once that's done, you'll be able to take off your recoil spring. You just simply slide it forwards and out it comes. This is the stock recoil spring. I also do make a replacement of these that is uprated to about 150%, gives you a faster cycle rate, but we will be moving on from that now. Put this to one side. And then finally, we have our guide rod. This just pulls out just a bit that way, and then you just pull it out from the rear. This is made of, quite frankly, quite a weak, cheap plastic. However, it doesn't take much stress, so it doesn't need to be too strong. And we will also put this to one side for now. This then leaves us with our bolt and our nozzle. So you just pull out the nozzle from here. Very simple. This is our plastic nozzle. I will actually be taking this apart and showing you how to do so in just a moment, but we'll continue with the bolt for now. And this is our bolt. And in our bolt, we have our piston head. This can be just removed with your fingers. It is just held on with a bit of friction. It's good to lube that up, keep everything nice and smooth and sealed. And then here we have our fire select system. So this is just held in by a screw, and we're going to go undo that now. Put that screw down to one side, pull this out, or pull it out like that, and then that is your bolt, and then these two pieces. These two pieces are your fire select. They rub against each other and push the sear into certain positions to allow you to shoot full auto and semi-auto. So next we will put this down, and we will come back to our nozzle. So let's take apart the nozzle. To do this, you need to push out a small pin located here and here on the same side. It's the same pin, and you just push this out, and you'll be able to access your nozzle. You can do this with just a fine head for a screwdriver. This is held in by a little roll pin. It can take some force to get out, but just be aware of that. Keep that to one side. And if you turn this upside down, you will get your valve and your valve spring, and that is everything totally taken apart in your bolt assembly. So what we'll do is now we'll just quickly reassemble it and see where we get to. Firstly, you want to drop the spring down into this hole. It should go right to the bottom of your nozzle, sometimes a little easier said than done. You then want to put your valve this way down into your nozzle. Once that's in there, you'll be able to poke it and it'll be nice and bouncy, all snug and good. Next, you want to put your roll pin back in. So you put it the smooth side first into the right-hand side of the nozzle. Push that down there. And then you'll need some force to get this all the way flush, all the way in. Sometimes you can just push it against the table and it will go in nicely. There we go. I've just pushed that in almost perfectly flush now. I'll just give it a little more and it should be fine. Perfect, so that's all done now. What we'll do is we'll put this to one side and then we'll do the fire select and then we'll come back to it. So first you want to put the actual sear this way up, this side down, into the rear channel here of your bolt. There'll be a little play left to right, but that's fine. That's the way up it should sit. Then you want to put your fire select so it sits over this little post here in the middle of this hole, like so. And then you just want to put your screw back in the middle and then screw that down. There's no need to tighten down this screw very hard. Nice and hand tight is more than enough. Once that's done, it should positively snap between the two. Next, we can move to our nozzle. So the nozzle just goes through our BBU, through these channels, and sits over our piston cup. Next, we can move on to our recoil system. So we want to get our guide rod, and we want to get the guide rod so that it has this little hill here going into the channel of our BBU. So you can push it in head first, and so that it is this way up, as you can see. Next, you want to get your recoil spring and slide it through the top here, through the hole, and down onto our guide rod. Very simple and easy. Then you want to get this block with our two screws in it on each side and our nozzle return spring on this little post. This is held in just simply with friction. And you want to put it in through the top as well with the nozzle spring going through a little channel on the right hand side here. Now obviously it won't go straight on, you will need to screw it tight, so we'll just do that now. And just like our fire select, you don't need to overdo this, just do it nice and hand tight, nothing too crazy. Simple. There we have it. Our bolt is done. So now let's come back to our upper assembly. Next we can do our hop up. Hop up is held in by these two screws, so let's go and remove them now. Put these screws to one side to make sure they're safe. Once this is done, your whole outer barrel and hop-up unit will come out as one piece. It comes out through the front like this. And then you have your upper assembly and your barrel assembly in two separate pieces. So we can put this to one side for now. So our hop-up isn't quite out yet. There is still this screw holding it in here, as well as this screw. So we will just go and do them now. Once that is done, your hop-up will just come out. You will need to twist it to do so, but it will just pull apart like so. That leaves you with our barrel, which we will just quickly finish off. So on your barrel, you have your front sight and your thread protector. Your thread protector will just twist off like so. There you have your threads, 14mm counterclockwise. We will put our thread protector to one side for now. Next up, we have our front iron sight. So we will just unscrew that really quick. Once this screw is out, your front sight will simply just lift off. And here is our front sight. And our final outer barrel too. So, back to our hop-up unit. So first off, we have a little O-ring that goes over our inner barrel. This is just to keep it tight at the end of our outer barrel to stop it from vibrating. Barrel is aluminium and 129mm long, and we have a lot of screws here that will help us take it apart. So let's just start with those ones. We're going to want to start with this screw here, which is our adjustment for our hop-up unit. This will come out and we'll just put it here, safe for keeping. So we'll then lift off these little cog-looking things. And then we can move on to taking out these 4 screws that hold in the 2 sides of our chamber block. Once that is done, you just lift it up. It all comes into 2 pieces. So let's put this all down and see what we have inside. We'll start with our inner barrel and hop bucking. So barrel bucking, bucking just pulls off like so. Very simple, very easy to do. And to put it back on, there is a little groove in the bottom of the barrel here, and you just line that up with the groove that is also found in your bucking. Once this is all into place, this will align this little outside nub onto the right side of the barrel. This aligns into your hop-up chamber and makes everything straight and shooting well. Let's move on to the hop-up chamber itself. So when you took out your hop-up chamber, you might have noticed there was a little screw. This is here and here. These are actually what screw into your outer barrel to hold it into place, so sternly. So let's just make sure they stay there. They can be quite easily lost. In the other section of our hop-up chamber, we have our hop-up arm. So now we can get back onto reassembly. So with this half of the hop-up chamber that says hop-up on it with our cogs, you want to get your hop-up arm, and with this little sticky out piece, you want to put it through the hole on the left-hand side to the left of the H. This makes sure that it's aligned correctly for our bucking. Then you want to get the other side that had those little nut pieces, so it makes sure they don't fall out because they are not held in with friction. And you want to align the little nub on the side of your bucking with this cutout here. Put one inside the other, and they should hold in place much more ideally. Now that we have both pieces, we want to slot them together so that everything fits snugly. So the easiest way to do this is to make sure that these bolts on the right side of the chamber with our inner barrel slot into the little slots on the left-hand side that houses our hop-up arm. Just like that, they are in one piece together, everything looks good. Once you have the 2 sides together, you want to do the 4 screws that hold it all together tightly. And just like every single screw in the AAP, you just want to do it hand tight, nothing too torquey. Next, you want to do the hop-up cogs. So first you want to get the cog without outside teeth and put it on the left post and have the arrow sticking to the right. Then you want to get the right-hand cog and put it so that the other arrow is pointing also at the same arrow, pointing leftwards. Once these are together, they should spin nicely. After that, put in the screw that was holding in the right cog, and we should be good to go. Just a little word of warning that if this screw is too tight, applying hop-up will be increasingly more difficult, so it is extra important not to do it too hard. Next, we will move back to our outer barrel and assembling that. So first we'll add our thread protector again. Nice and hand tight yet again. And then our front sight has a little post on it that aligns perfectly with a little recessed hole here on our outer barrel. This then aligns it, and we put in our screw to hold it all in place. There we go, all fixed and ideal. Next up, you want to slot your hop-up chamber back into your outer barrel. Once the hop-up chamber is into the outer barrel, we want to do these side tabs here, which is the shorter screws of the 4 we have remaining. Again, not too tight, just enough to keep it snug. We can then move that into our upper receiver. And that should align with the 2 holes left remaining on our outer barrel, which are our longer screws. Now that that is assembled, we can then put our bolt back in. The bolt just drops into the rear here, nice and simple. And then finally, we drop in our rear iron sight on top and put in the 2 screws that hold it together. Perfect. That is our upper assembly finished and completed. And now we move on to our lower assembly. This is definitely going to be the most difficult part about this video. I have struggled for quite a significant amount of time with lowers of Glock and AAP style, particularly with the hammer section. But I've done it enough times where now I'm comfortable enough to show you how to do it, but just bear in mind that it is still fidgety and it will still be difficult. So first off, we will need to take out this screw on this side and this screw on that side. Once these are out, put them somewhere safe so you can remember where they came from. What we'll do next is we'll also take out our safety switch here. And to do that, you just need to push in on this piece here so that it fits through the plastic slot that the button comes through on the other side. Just like that, put it to one side. Now that we've done that, we can take out this front screw here on the front. Now once that is done, we are going to take apart a pin that holds in a lot of key components in this front section, and that is this pin here. You can use a punch to get it out, and once it's done, just realize that a lot of this is going to come loose, so just be ready. Try not to lose anything, keep it on something where you can clearly see everything where that might fall out. It is advised that you push it out from this side to come out the right hand side. This is a knurled pin, so definitely easier to do it the way I said to. Once this is out, this front metal section will now be able to lift out. However, what you need to be careful of is this spring here, known as our trigger spring. So just be careful of that when taking it out. Also be careful of this lever here. This lever is what you use to actuate your slide release. There is a small sort of stick-like spring that holds this in that is also probably going to fall out, so just be careful of this. Now, this trigger spring is held in by a little post that is also kept into the body through this sort of bit of friction. So just be careful and maybe slide it just off that post and make sure you don't lose it. Okay, so this front metal section is out now. We can put it to one side. And now let's remove this trigger spring that goes over our trigger bar. Keep this to one side, they're very important, we will need it. Now luckily for me, my slide release spring and pin has not come out yet, so I'm just going to remove those now. This slide release is ambidextrous, unlike on a usual Glock, so it's double-sided like this. And this is the spring I mentioned. Yes, this is a spring, believe it or not, that sits on this. So we're just going to keep these together and put them to one side. Now you will have just your trigger, your mag release, and your hammer unit left. So what we will do next is we will have to take out these 2 pins here, which hold in our trigger mechanism, and that will allow us to take out our trigger bar and our trigger because they're all sort of connected. And it will also allow us to take out the takedown lever at the back here. So let's do that now. Now these pins you're going to want to push out from the same side as before. So from this side you push onwards to the right side. There goes one. It is important to remember that this bottom pin goes into this bottom section, so just keep it somewhere where you will remember this. And then we take out the top one likewise. Now this pin is just slightly different. It is knurled on one side, not the other, but it's also sort of like a baton, sort of a weird, unique shape. Remember, keep that somewhere you'll remember where it belongs. Now that this is done, you'll be able to lift out your trigger mechanism. However, something you need to be very careful of, there is a spring underneath this metal piece here, and it is held in by this side of the lower. So when you take this out, keep your thumb here to prevent it from flying across the room and lost to the abyss. And there we go. Our trigger will just depart like that. Now I won't show this breakdown in its fullest because it is very, very simple, but if you would like to swap your trigger, you just need to take out these two pins here, and that will separate your trigger bar out, and then you just simply attach your new trigger bar, and you can do the reassemble steps when I get to them. So before we move on to the trigger box, here we have the lower. Now to remove this rear piece here that lets us take down, you simply just pull it backwards, and it will come out, a nice little metal piece. And that leaves a spring in here that is held in with friction, so you can just pull that off and put on a new one as you need it. I'm just going to put this on here because it doesn't matter that it's there, and it just is a place that I will remember it. Next up is a fidgety one, and it can also be quite hard to show on camera, so I might need to get an additional light. But we're going to take out your mag release. I'm going to get my phone light here to see if I can illuminate it for you. Now in there, you can see a small little sticky up spring, and you want to push that to the right and then forward towards where you would be shooting to try and get it to come loose, and then your mag release should just come out. And like so. The mag release is out, and that just leaves you with the spring still in your AAP. Now to get this remaining little spring in here that was holding your mag release, you will need to push the right hand side of this spring located here. It's very hard to show on camera. You will need to push it to the left, and then you will need to pull up on the longest side of metal on the left hand side. There you have it. This spring is out. I'm going to put this back in now because there's no reason for me to take it out. And to put this back in, you just simply align it with the channels and just push it all the way in. Once that's in, we can put back our mag release. So I want my mag release on the, I guess the left-hand side of the gun for right-hand use. So I just push it through that way. And then, just like we did with takedown, but in reverse, we push the spring forwards and then back down into the little channel in our mag release. And now it's all working fine. So now we move on to by far the hardest part of your AAP-01 takedown. And the reason this is hard is because there are lots of small parts in here and they're held in by tension. So lots of spring tension in here, and you also have to make sure everything's in the right spot. It might take you a few attempts. It has certainly taken me a few attempts in the past, but we're going to try it together and hopefully this will help you. But first off, we're going to take out this metal piece with this spring underneath it. As I said before, keep your thumb over it, lift out this metal piece. You might need to push down on it to get it out, put it to one side, and then the spring will just fall out with it. Let's keep those together. Next up, we're going to remove some of the pins that hold in the hammer and the lower section which controls your disconnector. Now it doesn't matter which way out you push these, neither end is knurled. And again, keep your hand enclosed over this, as one of your springs may come loose. For instance, mine just did. This spring here. Let's keep that together. And remember that this pin went on the bottom. If you move this about, you'll notice that this also comes out. So let's keep all these together. Next up, we're going to move this top pin. Now, there is quite a bit of tension held in by this top pin with the hammer. It is not easy to get back in once we have done this, so let's just be careful when we do this, and also, as I said before, keep your hand on it so it's not going anywhere. So next up, if we flip over the hammer housing, we have this pin here, which helps hold in part of the mechanism that holds our hammer. So we're going to push this out, and just as I said before, try keep your hand over everything to make sure nothing comes loose and flies across the room. There is quite a lot of spring tension, so do be careful as you take it out. Just like that, this pin is out. Put it to one side. That's our middle pin. And out comes this silver piece. So we'll put that with the middle pin. And also out comes our hammer. Here on the hammer, we have our roller, which is this sort of spade shape from like a pack of cards, and then our hammer spring. And we will get to these later when we come to reinstall. So just take them out, you just simply pull them off and put them back on again. It's very simple to replace them. Some like to people like to replace this little spade piece with a bearing, but we will move on from here and keep this all together in one piece. And then finally, we have the top pin. Now, the top pin helps hold in our auto sear, which helps us select semi-automatic and fully automatic. So this is also held under spring tension, so just be careful as we take that out. I am going to flip it over so it is this side, and I'm going to push this pin out of that way. Doing so will now leave your hammer assembly totally empty, so we can put that to one side. And just now, out came all these little pieces. So this is our auto sear and the pin that held it in. So let's go put it back and fully assemble this. So we get the piece we just took out, and we have our pin, our auto sear, and our spring. And in this orientation, you want to put this spring in here and through the little crack that it has in the rear. Like so. Now, what you want to do is you want to put the spring side in with the metal piece onto the right-hand side here of this chamber. Now, because of the spring, you will need to bend it so it fits on this edge here, and there will be tension, so you will need to hold it in place. This is not easy, and it will be finicky, and despite me having small hands, even I struggle with this. So let's all just be patient with it, and it will eventually get there. So there we have it inside there. So I have the spring on this side, and I'm holding it in place, and it is remaining tension, bouncing along. And so what we do is we grab the pin from earlier, and we want to push it in to keep it there and prevent us from having to hold it all the time like this. The pin that you want to put in has this side with a little cap on it, and you want to put it in the little recessed groove on the left-hand side here. Push it all the way through. You want it to go through the hole in the metal and out the other side. Once that is pushed all the way through, you'll have it here like this. It will have some movement to it. It's all held in place. Congrats, we've done one of the fidgeter bits of this build. Now next, we move on to the hammer. Installing this will take the most physical effort in this entire build. It takes quite a lot of strength, and it's very picky, so we're just going to try our best here. Now, it's good to have this pin on hand because doing this is pretty difficult without it. So just as a reminder, this pin goes into this hole here, and it goes pointed side first. So the flat side sits this side. It's just useful to remember that whilst we do this next step. With this arm of the hammer spring rests against this inside piece here. What you want to do is basically bend and push against this hammer spring until you eventually get it so that it sits well with this hole here, and it aligns perfectly for you to push the pin through. Now, when you first do this, you will laugh at me and you will think that this isn't possible. And I promise you that it is, and this is the way to do it. There have been times before where I have had to push this against a table to get it to line up properly, but we will just see where this takes us. As you can see, even I'm struggling here, so don't worry. It will take time. You will get there. It will be worth it. And once you do get it lined up with the hole, have that pin ready and put it through so that it holds the hammer. So I'm going to have to do this off camera because this is too difficult to show on camera. For a little bit of frustration, I've managed to get it, and my fingers have seen better days. But what I would suggest is once this pin is through, you want to have it so that the pin actually doesn't go fully through this middle gap here in your hammer, because this is where a silver piece will be going, also known as your knocker that hits the gas in your mag. We back that out just a bit. The hammer stays in, and we can put in this silver piece. And what you want is you want the silver piece to go in this way up, and you want this metal hammer side to come through this gap on the front here. Just like that. So it needs to sit there just like that. And then you want to align it so the pin goes through the hole in that silver piece. Now, once that silver piece is in there, you will be able to push it all the way through. This pin doesn't go flush on this side too much, and it also sticks out slightly on this side. But there you go. That is the hardest part of this hammer assembly done. So now we can move on to the easier bit. You then want to get this piece here with this little ledge, and you want this ledge to fit in on this cutout here. So put it in here, slide it along, and it should fit in like that. So here it is here. Get a bit of movement on it. So once that metal piece is in there, you want to grab this weird spring we had before, and this part wants to lay in a little part of this piece that we just put in. I'm sorry, I'm not putting a lot of technical jargon into here. This is just how I know it. So you want to put this metal post against here, and so that it matches up with this hole here in the hole in the spring. So we'll do that first. So the easiest way to do this is to put the spring in here so that it lines up with the hole in the metal piece, and then also with this side hole here, and then putting in the pin that came with the trigger box. And so once that lines all of them up and it stays in place, that keeps the spring in there as well as the metal piece, and allows you to push back this spring in like that, and you want to hook it in to the silver piece in the middle that is part of the inside of our hammer. You will see that it is in there. It is hooked into the silver piece, and now there is some tension on it. Next up, we get to the final bits now. Remember this little guy before? He used to hold in that very tense spring here. So what we will do is we will grab that spring, put it in like so it just sits in that gap, and then we want to keep our thumb over it whilst we push in this guy. He pushes past it and hits in this a little dent in here, little channel. That's all held in tight. Well done. You've done the hardest part now. Now that this is done, we can see about putting it into our lower and getting everything meshed up nicely. So to do this, we are going to need to grab our trigger piece from before, and your trigger bar is going to want to sit just about here. It sort of lives in this sort of section here. This will be a lot more easy once we put it into the lower. So let's get our trigger, worm it through the guard there. Now we've got it sat nicely here. And then what you want to do is, whilst that's in the guard there, slip it over your little piece in that channel that I said before. And then luckily, the AAP hammer box has a little hook here that hooks into back here. So let's all slip that into place. And it actually has nice little channels on this lower, so it should actually be a bit easier. And there we go. That little hook falls into this pushy button here that we use to take the upper off. It aligns with this hole here, which we used before. And our trigger is in there, albeit wobbly, but that's where it should be. Okay, so next we get our weird pin that we had before that was on top. This is the one with, looks like a baton. Actually, it is knurled, so we will need to go from this side. So knurled end is this one. We just push it through like so, and then just make sure that this is nice and flush. So I'm just going to do that off camera really quick with a little punch and hammer. There we go. That's all nice and sits well. Then we will do the same with this bottom pin here. You grab it, it has a knurled end. Knurled end is this side. Push through here, and then push it in with a nice little punch set. There we go. Our hammer assembly, the hardest part, is installed. So now we move on to the fiddly leftovers. So now we move on to the home stretch, and what you want to do is you want to grab your metal front piece and slide it on top of the front, and just keep it there. You don't need to put the screw in just yet. We then want to attach our ambidextrous bolt release. You will need the weird spring from earlier. This weird spring has a little foot here, and you want to slide that under the bolt release and onto this little lever here. It's on the underside, like so. And then it should sit like this. Then you want to put this underneath the metal piece, but on top of your trigger. There's like a small gap here, and you want to slide it in place of where it should be when you want to release the bolt. Now this will be tricky because you will need to hold the spring in place at the same time, but once it's in there, it will stay firm and you won't need to worry about it again. Just like that, it's in. Now move on to the next thing, and this next thing is going to be fiddly, but it will save us a lot of time later. You want to get your trigger bar spring, and you want to put one end over the hook back here, like so, and then you want to lift out just slightly the metal piece holding at the front. Then you want to get the hoop of the top end of the trigger spring and put it over the bar on your metal piece here. Once you have done that, you just slide the metal piece back into place, and it should remain tension and keep it there. Very fiddly, but that's the quickest way to do this. Next up, you want to put in this pin here, our last main body pin. You want the knurled end on the right hand side, and you want to push it in from the left. And what you need to do at the same time is making sure that the trigger and the arms are all lined up perfectly, so they leave a lovely little hole for it to go through perfectly. This might take some attempts for you to get right. One way to do this actually a bit easier now that I think about it would be to put in our front screw here, screw that in like so, perfect. And then just like I said, knurled side on the right, push in from the left, make sure the trigger and such is aligned. You might need to pull the trigger to get it to look perfectly down the hole. You might also need to hold down your little release like so, push it through, and then with a little punch, get it in nice and flush. Next, we're going to put in your little safety. Now to do that, you just want to squidge down on this arm and work its way through, like so. Push it through the body, get it to the other side, and push it down again on the inside, and there you have it. It's in again, working as it should. Finally, you want to get the two screws from the very beginning that held in the metal block at the front. Now that this is done, we can put our upper back on top and see how it works. You then want to put your upper on top here. Might require a little bit of a nudge, and then you want to push it down here and push this button in at the back to get it sit nicely. Let's put a mag in it to make sure everything's working correctly. There's no BBs in this mag, no BBs in the chamber. Bolt lock is working. full auto working properly. And semi-auto working properly. Congratulations, you have taken apart your AAP-01 from the upper all the way down to the lower to every single individual piece. So there you have it, we've managed to fully disassemble the AAP-01, everything in the upper, everything in the lower, all completely done. As you can see, it is not so easy first time around, but the more you do this, the easier it will get. More AAP-01 products are coming, so that means you'll need to be disassembling your AAP more and more. However, the more you do this, the more familiar you'll become. Speaking of which, I do in fact sell my own AAP-01 upgrades. I have a link in the description where you can check out my website and see the stuff we sell. We sell everything from short stroke kits, recoil springs, nozzle springs, soon stuff for the hop-up unit of the AAP-01, as well as lubricants to keep everything running nice and smoothly. If you did enjoy the video, I could really appreciate a like on this, maybe share it to a friend, and ultimately a subscription goes so far for us. It's actually quite crazy how quickly this channel is blowing up, and I really appreciate all of you for watching. We've got a lot more videos coming. I know I do keep saying that, but we really do. There's just so much going on at Waldo Customs, it can be hard to keep track sometimes. But it's worth being patient for. There's a lot coming, and I'm really excited to share it all with you.